The soft hum of the church organ filled the morning air. Sunlight streamed through stained glass, painting the wooden pews in hues of gold and crimson. 8-year-old Emily Carson knelt on the hard floor of the old church, her small hands clasped tightly together. Her big brown eyes, glistening with unshed tears, stared at the worn altar as she whispered the words that had lived in her heart for years. God, I just want a dad for Mommy, someone who loves her, someone who can keep us safe. She didn't notice the shadow at the back of the church. She didn't notice the man, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, leaning against the doorway, his eyes hidden behind sunglasses. Nathaniel Cross, billionaire CEO of Cross Industries, had wandered into the church that morning on a rare day off, seeking silence from the chaos of wealth, power, and endless expectations. And now, without realizing it, he was listening to a prayer so pure, so desperate, that it would change the course of his life, and theirs forever. 1. Life in a small apartment. Emily's life had never been easy. She and her mother, Hannah Carson, lived in a modest apartment on the edge of the city. The kind of place where peeling paint, a stubborn leak, and an old radiator were normal parts of life. Hannah worked 3 jobs to keep the lights on and food on the table. She was proud, resilient, and fiercely protective of Emily, but years of struggle had left her weary. Some nights, she would sit at the kitchen table with her head in her hands, exhausted, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. Emily understood more than most children her age. She knew her mother was tired. She knew their small apartment would never feel like a palace. But she also knew something deeper, a hole in their lives that nothing could fill. A father. Someone to protect her mother. Someone to make her laugh again. And so, every Sunday morning, she went to church, knelt on the floor, and whispered the same wish. God, please give Mommy a dad. Give us someone who can love us. 2. The unexpected witness. Nathaniel had intended to pray quietly for his own burdens, the weight of running an empire, the loneliness of a life spent in boardrooms, and the constant expectation to be perfect. But then he heard her voice. Small, innocent, honest. He froze in place. A little girl, alone in her desire, had opened her heart completely. No pride, no hesitation, no expectation, just a raw, aching hope for something better. For a moment, Nathaniel forgot he was a billionaire. Forgotten were the board meetings, the contracts, the financial reports. All that existed was the purity of her prayer and the woman behind her, working tirelessly, carrying a lifetime of quiet courage. He felt something stir, a warmth he hadn't felt in years. A desire to do something meaningful, something that mattered outside the walls of his empire. And then she said something that made him catch his breath. God, please make sure Mommy can smile again. 3. The chance encounter. After the service, Emily and Hannah lingered near the entrance, waiting for a moment of quiet before stepping into the bustling streets. Emily clutched her mother's hand tightly. Hannah, frazzled but smiling, looked down at her daughter. Are you feeling better, Em? She asked softly. Emily nodded, though her eyes still carried a hint of sadness. Nathaniel, watching from across the room, made a decision. He would not leave without speaking to them. He had no plan, no reason beyond a sudden urge to act, but something told him he couldn't ignore the moment. Excuse me, he said as he approached, his voice calm, yet commanding. Hannah looked up, startled. Yes, can I help you? Nathaniel smiled gently, hiding the weight of his own loneliness behind professional courtesy. I couldn't help but overhear your daughter's prayer. I know this may sound forward, but you both seemed like you could use a little help. Hannah's eyes narrowed slightly, unsure. I'm sorry? I don't understand. Nathaniel's gaze shifted to Emily, who was staring at him with wide eyes. Sometimes, he said softly, help comes from people you don't expect. And sometimes it comes in ways you never imagine. He handed them a card, simple, unassuming. If you ever need assistance, or just someone to listen, call me. My name is Nathaniel Cross. I want to help. Emily gasped. Really? Nathaniel nodded. Really? No strings. No judgment. Just help. Hannah blinked, unsure what to say. She had lived her life surviving without handouts. But something about the sincerity in his eyes made her pause. Emily tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, could he be the dad we prayed for?" Hannah smiled, tears threatening to fall. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, hope felt real. For the first step. Over the next few days, Nathaniel quietly observed from a distance, arranging small gestures, groceries delivered to their apartment, school supplies for Emily, and even fixing a broken heater that Hannah couldn't afford to repair. Every act was anonymous at first, a secret kindness. Hannah noticed the improvements, but didn't know who was behind them. Emily, however, suspected. She whispered to her mother, "Mommy, I think God sent him." Hannah smiled, a mixture of exhaustion and disbelief. "Maybe, sweetheart. Maybe." But Nathaniel didn't stop there. He wanted to do more than just provide material help. He wanted to rebuild their sense of security, to restore trust in people, to give them a glimpse of a world where kindness existed. The next Sunday, Nathaniel Cross returned to the same church. He had spent the past week watching from a distance, arranging quiet acts of help for Hannah and Emily. The groceries were restocked. The apartment heater had been repaired. School supplies were waiting neatly in Emily's backpack. But today he wanted something more. He wanted to meet them. He stood in the back pew again, sunlight cutting through the stained glass and hitting his crisp suit. The church smelled faintly of old wood and candle wax, familiar and comforting. He saw Emily kneeling as always, hands clasped tightly, whispering another prayer. Nathaniel hesitated. This was sacred ground, a private moment. But he couldn't leave. Not after the week of planning, after seeing the little girl's hope in her eyes, after witnessing her unwavering love for her mother. 1. The first conversation. After the service, Nathaniel approached slowly. His polished shoes made no sound on the worn floor, but Emily looked up instantly, her eyes widening in recognition. "Mr. Cross?" she whispered. "Yes," he replied, lowering his voice. "I was hoping to see you again and your mother." Emily turned to Hannah, who had just stood up, arranging her coat. Her mother's expression was one of cautious surprise. "Good morning," Nathaniel said politely. "I hope I'm not intruding. I felt like maybe I could help. In some way." Hannah's eyes narrowed slightly, the natural instinct of a woman who had survived by herself kicking in. Help? With what? Nathaniel hesitated. How could he explain that he had spent the last week quietly arranging groceries, fixing the heater, and leaving school supplies for Emily without coming across as condescending? "I saw your daughter praying last week," he said finally, "and I wanted to do something that mattered. Something real. I arranged some things for you at home, quietly." Hannah's brow furrowed. "Arranged things?" Nathaniel nodded. "The heater is fixed. Food is delivered. Emily's school supplies were taken care of." Emily gasped softly. "Really?" Hannah felt a swell of emotions, gratitude, disbelief, suspicion. But before she could respond, Nathaniel added, "More than that. I want to help in a way that gives you dignity and security. Not charity. Real help." Hannah's eyes widened, but before she could speak, Emily tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, maybe he really is the answer to my prayer." Hannah glanced at Nathaniel. The sincerity in his eyes was undeniable. Something inside her softened, a cautious hope that maybe, just maybe, someone outside their little world could care without asking for anything in return. 2. A walk that built trust. Nathaniel offered to walk them to the nearby park. It was a warm spring morning, sunlight filtering through the budding trees, birds chirping overhead. Emily skipped happily, holding both their hands, Nathaniel's large hand enveloping hers carefully. "Your daughter has a remarkable spirit," Nathaniel said quietly to Hannah. Hannah smiled faintly, trying to hide her vulnerability. "She's always been my motivation, my reason to keep going." "I can see that," Nathaniel said, his eyes softening. "She's honest, kind, and brave. And she deserves someone who can support both of you. Not just financially, but emotionally." Hannah's heart thumped. She hadn't heard words like this in years. Words that didn't carry judgment, expectation, or hidden motives. Emily glanced up at Nathaniel. Mr. Cross, do you think God sent you to help us? Nathaniel smiled, a rare, unguarded smile. Perhaps. But sometimes, he sends people and lets them choose to act. Emily's tiny hand squeezed his. Nathaniel felt warmth spread through him, something he hadn't felt in years, a connection that transcended wealth, power, or social boundaries. 3. Nathaniel's proposal. After spending the morning together, Nathaniel decided it was time to make a formal offer. Hannah, he said gently, I want to make a proposal. I know pride is important to you. I know you've survived by yourself for a long time. But I want to provide support, not as charity, but as a partnership. I want to help you and Emily in a way that gives you independence, stability, and freedom. Hannah's eyes widened. What kind of support? Nathaniel reached into his coat and handed her a neatly folded document. A trust fund for Emily, medical care, education, and a comfortable living arrangement. You would oversee it. You would remain in control. Hannah's voice trembled. I don't know what to say. No one has ever offered me anything like this before. Say yes, Nathaniel whispered. Say yes to letting someone care for you as much as you care for your daughter. Let me help you both. Emily clapped her hands softly. Mommy, this is it. God answer my prayer. Hannah's tears fell freely. She wasn't just accepting help. She was accepting trust, kindness, and hope. 4. Small acts of love. In the weeks that followed, Nathaniel began showing that kindness wasn't fleeting. He visited often, ensuring that Emily's school and recreational needs were met. He installed a small library in their apartment so Emily could read freely. He helped Hannah get a part-time job that allowed her to spend more time with her daughter. Every small act reinforced the bond. Emily thrived, her laughter filling spaces that had been silent for too long. Hannah slowly let go of her fear of being dependent on others, learning that accepting help could be empowering rather than humiliating. Nathaniel, in turn, found himself changing. The walls he had built around his heart for decades slowly began to crumble. He laughed more freely. He worried less about appearances. He experienced joy in watching the bond between mother and daughter and discovered a newfound capacity for genuine care and affection. 5. A promise beyond wealth. One evening, after Emily had fallen asleep, Nathaniel stayed behind to speak with Hannah. Your daughter prayed for a father, he said softly, sitting across from her at the small kitchen table. I can't replace anyone from your past, but I can promise this. I will always protect, support, and care for both of you. Not because I want to control, not because I want gratitude, but because it's the right thing to do. Hannah's voice trembled. I never imagined anyone would offer this kind of support. Not just for Emily, but for me. Nathaniel smiled gently. Sometimes kindness is the only legacy worth leaving. And sometimes answering a simple prayer can change more lives than any business deal ever could. Hannah reached across the table, taking his hand. It was a gesture of trust, of acceptance, and perhaps the beginning of something neither had expected. The morning sun spilled across the Carson apartment, highlighting its modest charm. Emily was already awake, bouncing on her small bed, whispering to herself a secret hope that today might be the day their lives would truly change. Hannah, preparing breakfast, glanced at her daughter and smiled wistfully. Despite everything, Emily's optimism remained unbroken, a tiny flame that kept their world alive. Little did they know, today Nathaniel Cross would arrive, not with gifts or money or grand gestures, but with a plan to rewrite the course of their lives entirely. A visit that meant more than words. Nathaniel knocked gently on the door. Hannah opened it to find the billionaire standing there, hands in his pockets, his usually stern face softened. Good morning, Hannah. Emily, he greeted warmly. Emily ran to him instantly, hugging his legs. Mr. Cross. I knew you'd come. Hannah chuckled softly, a mixture of surprise and relief washing over her. You're early. I wasn't expecting anyone today. Nathaniel smiled. Neither was I, but I couldn't wait. I have something important to discuss. something that will help both of you." Hannah and Emily exchanged curious glances, sensing the weight behind his words. 2. The offer of a new life. Nathaniel led them to the small living room and sat down with a calm authority. "Hannah, Emily," he began, "I've seen how hard you've worked, how brave you've been, and how much love you pour into each other. It inspired me. I want to offer more than just temporary help. I want to provide stability, education, and security. A real chance at life without fear." Hannah's eyes widened. I don't understand. What do you mean?" Nathaniel pulled out a folder. "I've arranged a trust for Emily, covering her schooling, health, and future. I've also organized resources for you, Hannah, so you can work fewer hours, spend more time with your daughter, and focus on your dreams." Emily gasped, eyes shining. "God answered my prayer. Mommy, do you hear?" He answered it. Hannah fought back tears, overwhelmed by disbelief and gratitude. This is more than we ever imagined. Why would you do this?" Nathaniel's gaze softened. "Because kindness doesn't come from wealth, it comes from the heart. I know what it's like to feel alone. And I couldn't ignore a prayer so pure, so real. You too deserve hope, protection, and a chance to thrive." For the first time in years, Hannah allowed herself to believe. Not just in Nathaniel, but in the possibility that life could be gentle, generous, and kind. 3. A growing bond. Weeks passed, and Nathaniel became a constant presence, not a stranger delivering gifts, but a part of their daily lives. He helped Emily with school projects, taught her lessons about courage and compassion, and spent quiet evenings helping Hannah manage her responsibilities without overexertion. Emily thrived under this attention. Her laughter, once rare and cautious, now filled the apartment. Her prayers no longer carried desperation. They carried gratitude and hope. Hannah noticed a transformation too. She had always been fiercely independent, but Nathaniel's consistent kindness taught her that accepting help wasn't weakness. She felt lighter, freer, and, most importantly, able to focus on nurturing Emily rather than surviving. The trio formed an unexpected family. Nathaniel, once a man trapped by walls of wealth and routine, found warmth and purpose. Emily, a little girl who once whispered prayers in silence, saw them answered in ways she could never have imagined. Hannah, exhausted and burdened for years, finally felt supported and understood. 4. Lessons in kindness and trust. One rainy afternoon, Emily approached Nathaniel with a small notebook in her hands. "Mr. Cross," she said shyly, "I wrote a story about you and us, about how kindness can change lives." Nathaniel smiled, kneeling down to her level. "I'd love to read it, Emily." As she read, Hannah watched with tears in her eyes. The story was simple, yet powerful, a tale of a little girl whose prayers brought hope, a mother who never gave up, and a man who discovered that real wealth lay in the hearts of others. Nathaniel's chest tightened. He had never imagined that being kind, listening, and helping could feel this fulfilling. He realized that the greatest power he had wasn't in money or influence. It was in the ability to make a meaningful difference in someone's life. 5. The promise of a future. Months turned into a year. Emily excelled in school, supported by the trust Nathaniel had established. Hannah found a job she loved, one that gave her dignity, creativity, and time with her daughter. Nathaniel, too, changed. He was no longer just the solitary billionaire CEO. He had discovered the joy of genuine connection, the warmth of family, and the power of quiet generosity. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Emily whispered, "God, thank you for listening to me. Thank you for sending Mr. Cross." Hannah held her daughter close, tears of happiness streaming down her cheeks. Nathaniel smiled, looking at both of them, and silently vowed, "No child, no mother, and no act of kindness will ever be ignored by me again." He had learned that responding to a single prayer with genuine compassion could reshape lives, hearts, and futures. 6. A legacy of kindness. Nathaniel didn't just help them temporarily. He created a foundation inspired by Emily's prayer, a program to support struggling single parents, provide education for children in need, and offer mentorship to those working tirelessly to care for their families. Emily and Hannah became active participants in this mission, showing that kindness, once received, could be multiplied. Their lives were no longer just about survival. They were about thriving, loving, and giving back. And as Emily grew older, she never forgot that one quiet Sunday morning, kneeling in church, her simple prayer had been heard by someone who chose to act. Yellow heart, if this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness, listening, and compassion can truly change lives. A single prayer, a single act, can create a legacy that lasts forever. Glowing Star, follow this channel for more heartwarming stories of humanity, unexpected generosity, and life-changing acts of kindness.